The next session is Summit Golf Brands Big Score with UGC content on paid social. It will be great to welcome Joe Yakuel, who's the CEO of Brkfst, and Jonah Redel-Traub, who's the director of Ecom for Summit Golf Brands.
Alrighty. Hello, everybody. Thank you for having us today. It's great to be here at CommerceNext. And I am here with Jonah. We're going to talk a little bit about UGC and the power of UGC for paid social. So as we kick it off, we talk a lot about UGC. I think you see a lot of that theme kind of running through the conference here today and tomorrow. We're going to play a quick sizzle reel so you can get a read for what does that actually look like and how does that come to life in the wild. And then we'll jump into some of our content today. So hopefully it gives you a little bit of a feel for kind of what UGC looks like when it comes to life in the wild. It's meant to look authentic. We'll talk a lot about that today in a way that resonates with your consumers based on the platform that they're on. With that said, Jonah, you want to just introduce yourself and talk a bit about Zero Restriction?
Yeah, so I'm Jonah Redel-Traub. I'm the director of e-commerce for Summit Golf Brands. I have 4 different consumer-facing golf apparel brands, and I'm responsible for the P&L of those 4 D2C businesses. Zero Restriction is the brand we're going to talk about today. It's one of the leading outerwear brands in golf. You'll see it on the PGA Tour, the President's Cup, the Ryder's Cup, super well known in the golf apparel world.
Awesome. Thank you, Jonah. And I'm Joe, founder and CEO of Brkfst. Brkfst is a UGC platform, which we'll be talking about today, where we have a network of about 3,000 content creators who are creating content on behalf of our brands. Before we kind of jump into the content, just a quick show of hands, I want to understand a bit about how much content brands are creating today, because while we're going to be talking about authenticity, we're also going to be talking about volume, which is really, really important. So let's just do a quick show of hands. Raise your hand if you're currently producing more than 5 videos a month. Let's see. Okay, cool. What about more than 10 videos a month? More than 20? Anyone making more than 50? Okay, cool. So we're going to be talking about how you can make hundreds of videos a month and do it really cost effectively. It looks like we had virtually no hands above 50, maybe one that I missed out in the crowd. And it's really doable. It's easy. You can also do it pretty quickly. So the 4 kind of pillars that we believe in at Brkfst are volume, variety, authenticity, and having a really good hook. And we'll be talking about a couple of those things as we go through our content today. So Jonah, you want to just tee it up and talk about the challenge you were facing at Summit or Zero Restriction and kind of what you were looking to do?
Yeah, totally. So, my challenge, like I'm sure a lot of you guys in the room, was that I was tasked with growing the brands pretty significantly in a world where, Facebook ads, business as usual, is getting more expensive. I've been hearing sort of a lot about organic video and TikTok, and, in my sort of really traditional golf apparel brand world, we just didn't really have the internal resources to make the type of content that I felt would really resonate on those channels. And the goal of this was to drive that growth at a cost-effective CPA number.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned, we have a few of these pillars. Some of these you see here. You want to just kind of talk a little bit about the solution here?
Yeah, so I think the really cool thing was Brkfst really soup to nuts the whole thing for me. So they wrote a super compelling brief that they distributed to a bunch of creators who were golfers themselves. We got them the apparel, and they created just a breathtaking number of videos in super short time.
Yeah, and the way that we work at Brkfst, as Jonah mentioned, is brief-led, right? So many of you are probably creating briefs already today, either internally or with agency partners. And the same thing works on Brkfst. We help you write these briefs. A lot of these briefs are specific to your brand or a product or a category. Sometimes these briefs are also trend-driven. So we work really closely in partnership with our paid social platforms. We find the trends that are resonating, and we turn those into briefs as well. Those briefs go out to that network of creators, about 3,000 strong, and then they apply to that brief, and then the product goes out, as Jonah mentioned, and we are able to create that content. And the content is meant to look authentic. Why don't you talk a little bit about that,
sure.
Jonah?
So on the left, you can see sort of my lame attempt at trying to get content that looks sort of authentic for the for the channel. And working with Brkfst, we got some really effective hook-driven videos super quickly.
And when we talk about hooks, right, we're talking about the first couple seconds of the video. As you can see on the right side, we're using a lot of best practices, text overlay, fast frame cuts, really quick to get to a hook. And these are part of our brief. It's part of the way that we work with creators, and it's part of the way that we train creators, so that you're not just working with somebody who knows how to create content, but you're doing that through a process that's really built to perform. Let's talk a little bit about volume, Jonah.
Yeah, it was absolutely crazy. I mean, you just dropped hundreds and hundreds of videos in my lap, and I went from basically being a brand that had one sort of campaign shoot a season, and maybe we'd get 1 or 2 videos out of that we'd have to try to chop up internally at a ton of time, to 150 plus assets within a couple weeks.
Absolutely. I think that's really the power of UGC, right? Is that I also own an agency called Within, which is a holding company above Brkfst. And when we create content with our creative agency, you just can't create nearly as much content at this pace and at this cost effectiveness, which is why we leverage UGC in addition to branded content with the clients that we work with. And I think maybe kind of brings us to the media side.
And so you give me 150 videos, what am I supposed to do with it? I run the Facebook ads internally, and I have no sort of process to manage 150 videos.
Yeah, and this is, I think, a common issue, right? Is when we talk about content creation at scale, the very next question is how do you do media management with that amount of content? And at Brkfst, we built automation to do that. You don't have to run media management through Brkfst. Some of our clients come to us and they just want the content production, and the deliverable is that content, and they use it wherever they'd like in their paid media programs, organic, social, even on-site or in emails. But then we also have an option of managing the media for clients if they choose to do so, just because we know of the challenge of dealing with such a high volume of content. And the way that we do that is quite simple. It's all automated. We built that automation on top of on top of social platforms to be able to take in those hundreds of videos each and every month, prune them to find the winners and what works for which audiences. The goal being, obviously, to serve the right ad to the right person at the right time. I think that's been the goal of marketing forever. But using the automation inside of Facebook and using our automation on top of it, we're able to really figure out which of those hundreds of videos work for which audiences, where in the funnel. And that's why we use many different audience strategies and different campaign types to make sure that we're leveraging the content as much as we can across the platforms. Yeah, and I think the results speak for themselves, Jonah.
Yeah, it was incredible. I mean, the goal was to sort of spend as much as I was spending in my own Facebook account, and we did that and got, significantly lower results in the account you guys were managing. And it also took, a good deal of strain off my account, and we saw better results in there as well.
Absolutely, and I think these results are not atypical. A couple other brands that we work with seeing similar results in terms of CPA efficiency that we're able to drive. And I think that's really the power of not just UGC as a whole, but really that volume and that variety and that authenticity all coming together while still using best practices for the paid social platforms. So what's next for the creator industry? I think there's 2 things, one that we're already seeing now and one that I think is still developing. The first one is we're seeing people wanting to use this type of content in a lot more places than the past. When we started Brkfst, people only wanted it for paid social. Now we're seeing people really want to use this authentic content on their website, on their product pages, on their category pages, in their email campaigns, on their organic feed. And it just resonates so much more with your customers that people want them to see this content outside of just the ad unit. And then second, obviously AI, everybody's talking about it. We're talking about it too. It's still not at the stage where we're implementing it inside of the Brkfst platform, but that will be something that is coming soon. For us, that doesn't mean replacing the creator. We believe that the content creator is here to stay, and original from scratch production is here to stay as well. But at the same time, I think AI can really take that content and do a lot more with it. Either help creators create that content faster, make that content better, or just create more variations of that content. That's something that we're certainly investing in here at Brkfst as well. So with that said, I just wanted to open the floor to some questions. If you'd like to get in touch with us, you can certainly do so. But in terms of questions, we're also going to be giving out some Brkfst gift cards, not for Brkfst as software, but for you to get some Brkfst items of your own, either here in the city at Sarah Beth's or through Goldbelly. So if anyone has a question, I'll send you to the back corner to my team afterwards, and they'll get your info for a gift card. So does anybody have any questions for myself or for Jonah? Don't be shy. Yeah, go ahead.
So if a certain creator is set to task 5 to 7, I'm making this up, like, are they given a certain amount of deliverables that they must hit? Is this the same for each creator? Kind of, how do you ensure variability amongst, the different creators that opt in, especially knowing that they can apply and it's not like the brand itself is choosing? I'd love to kind of know more about like the back end process for.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
so I'll just walk you through the process. It's pretty straightforward, and I think it'll answer a couple of your questions there. So as I mentioned earlier, and Jonah mentioned as well, it starts with the brief. One brand can launch as many briefs as they like, as often as they'd like. So first of all, you can have variation in the brief, right? One brief about a certain product, another brief about a trend, another brief about an event like a Valentine's Day or whatever the case is. So the briefs themselves can be unique, of course, and then that goes out to the creators who then apply to that brief. Those creators apply, you can approve or not approve the creator, so of course you have that ability as the brand. And then they go and then create content with your product. So you send them the product, they create the content, they submit it. Inside of each brief, we have a lot of variation because different creators, they read that brief and they internalize it differently, and the way they apply it is different. So a lot of the variations that you saw today came from the same brief, but different creators just took a very different approach to it. This is not scripted, right? So we're not saying, hey, say this from start to finish. We're telling them the concepts we want to hit. Think about it more like do's and don'ts alongside with a goal and some creator guidelines. And I say creator guidelines, not brand guidelines, because when we work with brands, the very first concern that they have, and Jonah can speak to one of these things himself, is this going to be on brand? And while yes, it will be on brand, it is not meant to look like branded content. If it was, it wouldn't be UGC and it wouldn't be authentic. So what we do is we work with brands before we even launch the first brief to take their brand guidelines and turn them into creator guidelines, which you can think of as a less restrictive version of your brand guidelines. So when you have your creator guidelines, you have your brief, and you have your creators, you end up with that kind of variety. And of course, not only do you approve the creator, but you also approve the content before it goes live. Does that answer all of your questions? Awesome. Yes. Wait for your mic. Thank you.
Hi, good afternoon. I think maybe this is a two-part question, but to the first question, I guess for Jonah, when you're talking about being on brand for the company that you're working with, do you really look to UGC creators for, I guess, like building the awareness, or really like does their content align with the community that you're really trying to target?
Yeah, I mean, I think the idea here is that we're using the content that Brkfst created against essentially our audiences that we shared with them from our Facebook account. Over to you.
Yeah, so Jonah's campaign was more performance driven. Obviously, We're talking about CPA here. We do have clients that come to us for other purposes. We have early stage clients that come to us to try to validate their value proposition for customers and come to us to test those things at a very early stage. We have others that come to us for brand awareness campaigns, and others that come to us to build out organic social. So because the brief is what drives the process, you can create that brief to achieve anything that you'd like to achieve for your brand as long as it's applicable to that UGC content format. So it's really anything from new product launches to bestsellers to events to brand awareness to just evergreen conversion.
Yeah, and then the last piece is that the creative does come from like the brand page. So it essentially just looks like a brand ad, and it just does perform, against the sales objective.
Yeah, we have the capability of whitelisting the creator as well, but it's not an influencer platform. It's a content creation or UGC platform. So some of these creators do have their own audience, some of them do not, and they're just good at creating content that works well for brands. So it really just depends on the creator you're working with, whether you'd like to whitelist with their handle, but otherwise the default is that we leverage the brand's handle. Did you have another question, or was that your question? All right, cool. Anyone else have any other questions? Yeah, go ahead.
Jonah, you had said, is this working? Yes? It's working?
I can hear it.
Okay. Jonah, you had said that the team produced multitudes of videos, so many more than you knew what to do with. So what's a good strategy for all of those versions and variations?
Yeah, so that's the cool thing is that Brkfst just runs them from, like, essentially they create a new ad account that they own and have control over that, has like page access or whatever, so it looks like it's coming from us. And they just, run it with their, bidding algorithm.
Yeah, so the automation runs in our ad account, but again, that's an option, it's not a requirement. So I would say most of the brands that come to us with the goal of conversion, like Jonah, will come to us with that model, and we'll automate the media management on the creative because there's just so much content volume that brands can't typically handle it. But if it's not a performance or conversion campaign, sometimes brands just want us to deliver the content and then they do whatever they want with it.
Are you doing any testing while you're running?
The entire thing is one giant test. I mean, we're testing multiple creators, multiple briefs, different approaches to content, different products, and different audiences and different campaign types. The automation on the media management does all of that testing on its own. The creative is something that obviously has a lot of human element, and the Brkfst account manager will work with you on the next iteration of the brief based on the performance of the previous briefs and previous creators. We'll, of course, leverage the same creators that were top performers for you, but we'll also create new briefs and new ideas based on either trends or other things that we're learning in the account.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Looks like we have 2 minutes left, so probably could take 1 or 2 more questions if anyone else has one. Yes. Mike's coming over to you. Just give him 1 second.
When you build the brief for the creators, do you put in like specific platform, say for TikTok when it comes to video, or you rather like get the video and then you optimize it for different platforms?
I'm so happy you asked that question. So going back to authenticity, right? Ideally, we want to do it in the way that's unique to the platform. It's just more authentic that way. There are certain things that make more sense for TikTok than they do for Instagram, than they do for YouTube Shorts, et cetera. So we do make it platform specific. Even inside of the platform, we can do a brief specific for IG stories, for example, versus a regular post. So yes, it is specific. Sometimes we will have clients who want us to repurpose content that was already made because it's performing so well, and of course we can do that, and that's an easy thing to do. But usually on the creation side, it is platform specific, even placement specific. Any other questions? Maybe one more before we wrap up. Oh, one more. Yeah, go ahead.
Is it on? Okay. Hi. So do you have any UGC creators that are international or that can be leveraged in international markets?
Absolutely. So we have creators internationally. We have creators of all demographics. And a lot of times people will come to us with a specific need that we don't necessarily have built out. and we can build them out very quickly. So for example, Jonah wanted golfers, right? We have a network of 3,000 creators. Obviously, we found out very quickly which of them were golfers in order to get them onto the brief. But then we also went and recruited more golf content creators for them. And we did the same thing for a hair care company. They wanted people with very specific hairstyles or hair types. And we were able to source that for them as well. So even if we don't have it, we can source it. But yes, we do have international ones already. With that said, we're going to wrap up today. Thank you so much for having us, and we'll be around.